Hey, it's Jeff with DaringDino.com. In this video, you will learn how to create a striped material in Blender. I'll cover how to set up a striped material that doesn't need UVs and how to tweak it. So let's get right into it. The first thing I'm going to do is add a few objects of different scale into our scene so that we can see how this material we're going to create will change depending on the different objects. So I'm going to add a really tall cylinder, so Shift A to add mesh and then cylinder, and then I'm just going to scale that up on the Z axis, and then Control A to apply the rotation and scale, and I'm going to move this over. I'm going to also add the traditional monkey and move this down a little bit. I'm going to switch to front view too with number pad 1. I'm going to add a sphere, and it doesn't really matter which one. Let's set, well, we'll move them around a little bit, and I'll set them all to smooth once I'm done adding them in. And then I'm going to add a cube and make it really big and pretty deep too. And let's move this back into the back. So now we've got 4 very different objects. For anything that's supposed to be smooth, I'm going to make sure that these are all set to smooth. So the monkey and the cylinder. And just a really quick tip, you want to do an edge split modifier on things that have sharp edges as well as soft or smooth, sorry. And let's set the sphere to have 2 subdivisions with Control 2, and the same with our Suzanne head, monkey head. Okay, so now we've got our scene kind of set up. I'm not going to save anything just yet. Actually, you know what? I will. So let me save this right here. Cool. And for the rest of the video, I'm going to be in compositing view. So I'm going to go to layout and then compositing. And what I'm going to do is set this one up to be a front view, orthographic. And then I'm going to change this window to be another 3D view. And we'll do kind of like this side view. And if you want more tips on how to do different layouts like this, check out the video that I just put out. It's called Customizing Your Blender Workplace. And I'll have a link to that somewhere in this video, either in the top right corner or in the description below. Let's make a new material and let's call it stripes. Let's see what this looks like right now. So it's just a white material. I just have it on this monkey head, but let's apply it to all of the materials all at the same time. So I can select my cube, shift select the sphere, the cylinder, and then last but not least, the monkey, and then Control L to make links to that object that we just selected, which is the monkey, and materials. And now they all have the stripes material applied to them. And I'll save that really quick too. Let's get into actually making the material. So we're actually going to keep this diffuse BSDF shader for a while. At the very end, I'll replace it with something that looks a little bit nicer, but for this tutorial, it'll be fine. And then I'm going to also turn on rendered view, which you can do by clicking down here and going into rendered, or over a 3D view, you can hit Shift Z to toggle between normal or solid view and rendered view. And we'll do that for both of these so that we can see exactly what's going to happen. I'm also going to adjust how many samples I need for my preview down to like 3, because that's all I really need. And we'll change this to be 500 when we do start rendering. To actually start making the striped material, the first thing I'm going to do is make it so that this color can change over the object size. And let's zoom in on these a little bit too so that we can see what's going on a little bit better. How you would do that is Shift A to add a converter, and then we want color ramp. And you might think that I could just plug this in and it'll work, but what it'll do is it'll just pick the middle value, and to make that a little bit more obvious, I'm going to change these black and white values. So I'm going to click on the black color right here. I'm going to make this a really strong pink, And then I'm gonna go to the next flag. And I did that by just clicking in here. And I'm gonna change that to be green. So you can see how in the middle of this gradient in this color ramp is a gray color, and that's the color it's gonna pick, which is not what we want at all. And to make it even more obvious, I'm going to add another flag, and I'm gonna make this red, just so you can see it's picking exactly the one in the middle. So since this looks really bad, I'm actually going to remove that and make these colors a little bit nicer. So we'll make that one there, and we'll make this one a yellowish color. We want to add in a gradient texture. So I will add that under Shift A, texture, and then down here to gradient. And now you will see that I can plug this factor into here. And now it's actually giving a gradient to all of my objects based off of the vector that's going in here. And since I don't have anything plugged in, it's going to use the generated vector space. And what generated means is for each object, it's just saying, okay, I'll go from the one edge to the other and make that the maximum and minimum that those values could be. So really simple. And if you wanted a gradient texture, there you go. That's how you would do that. But we're going to keep going. And I'm going to clean this up a little bit by doing Shift. I select everything, Shift equals sign, and then scale it down. And now everything's nice and in line. Cool. And I'm going to save once we've got that set up. Okay, so now we need to influence the vector. And I will do that by going into input, and then I will go into texture coordinate, just like that. And I'm going to use the generated, which won't change anything. Just to show you how this might change, if I go to window, I can make it so that no matter where I'm at my window, the left side is orange and the right side is yellow, which isn't really that helpful for what we're doing. So let's change it back to generated. And now we can actually set up the stripes. So instead of a normal gradient here, we're going to change the color ramp to be not a linear, but instead a constant. And what that will do is let me select this second flag here, and I'll just type in 0.5. And now you can see how each object has this one stripe material. And it's perfectly dividing it based on the geometry. We didn't have to do anything with UVs. The stripes are starting to work. But usually you don't want just 2 stripes on your object. Usually you want to be able to control how that works and have it repeat as many times as you want. So we have to actually do some math, and we need to break this vector apart, do some math on it, and then bring it back together. So all of the math is going to happen right in this area. And I completely did the wrong thing. In this area, in here. All right, so we're going to add a converter, separate XYZ, and let's for now break that apart. Move these over to the side, and then add another combine XYZ. And then what we're going to do is connect the X's, the Y's, and the Z's. And for just a second, I'm going to turn this off just so that we can focus on this piece right now. What we want to do is make it so that the gradient, instead of just going once, it actually repeats several times. Okay, so how we can do that is we can add in a vector mapping into here. And if you have this little automatically offset previous nodes in the chain when adding a new node enabled, if you drop something in like that, it'll just scooch everything to the side. And we actually want to leave this exactly how it is for now. And let's just see what we're at right now. And if I change this to be 2, 2, 2, you see it doesn't really do what we want. So that didn't work. Okay, so we still have to do some math. So let's make some more room by selecting these and using G to move them over. And then let's add in a converter math. And if I hover it over this top line, I can add that up there. So let's do that. And we want to use a math feature called modulo. And what modulo does is it's basically dividing it and then taking the remainder. So I want this modulo value to be 1. So what it'll do is it'll divide it by 1, and then it'll repeat the next phase over and over again. So instead of it just being one big gradient across all of them, you can make it into several different parts and it'll repeat. So I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate this and duplicate it for each one, and then kind of separate these out a little bit just so we've got something nice. Using B to select S and then X and then 0, and that'll make them all stacked perfectly. Cool. So now if we look at it, it looks exactly the same. But now if I set the scale to 3, 3, 3, now I've got 3 sets of stripes into my scene. So let's see it from this view too, which is exactly what we want to do here. So this scale over here is going to be controlling how many times those stripes appear for this setup. I'll show you how to make it so that it's a global setup later. But yeah, all you have to do is type in here how many times you want it to repeat. So say you want it to be 5 lines, so 5, 5, 5. And now each object has 5 sets of lines, or 10 lines, 10 stripes on each object. Pretty simple. So let's make this a little bit more compact here, kind of bring this stuff in so that we can see everything all at once, and I'll walk you through kind of exactly what it's doing. So let's start over here at the very beginning. So we're saying we want to use the generated texture space, which if I show you kind of what that looks like, it's a gradient, and it does that for each the X, Y, and Z axis. Then I'm saying I want to scale that by 5. I want to separate it out into X, Y, and Z, which the X is kind of the left to right here. The Y is the front to back, and the Z is the up to down. And then we're making it repeat several times. So the modulo 1 says divide it by 1, and then take the remainder of that. So 5 divided by 1, is 5, but it repeats 5 times. And you can see that very clearly here. Then I want to combine it back together so that I've got 5 of those generated UV spaces, or vector spaces rather, repeated 5 times. And then I'm taking a gradient, do that, and then I'm getting a color ramp and making that be my stripes, and then I'm adding in a diffuse texture. So now what I can do is I can make this color ramp be customized to exactly what I want. So if you want to have, let's say, 3 different stripes, I could make it so that this flag is at 0.333. And then I want to add another one and move that to 0.666. And then let's make this one blue. And now I've got 3 stripes. So this position is kind of just like a percentage. So I want this orange flag to start at the beginning. And then for the next 30%, or 33%, I want it to be this yellow color and then this blue color. You can make these colors whatever you want, and that'll change what color is being used for this diffuse shader. So now that we've got an idea of how to do that, you can also, make these whatever proportion you want. So you can make it a really thin yellow stripe, or, it's really up to you. You can do whatever you want in this space. As long as you use the constant fall off or interpolation, these lines will be super crisp. If you don't use that, if you use like any other one, you'll start to see gradients start to happen in between. At the edges, it'll still be sharp because we're doing some math there. But I doubt you want that for this effect. So just keep it at constant and everything will be cool. Now that we can customize everything with the color, obviously if you wanted a different shader, all of your shader stuff would just go in here and you would just use this color output from this color ramp as your color across the board. Okay, well, what if we don't want the stripes to be going kind of in the Y direction here? What if we want them to move? Well, you could affect the rotation of this mapping node. So if I rotate by 90 degrees, actually that was the wrong axis. If I rotate by 90 degrees in the Y axis, you'll see it rotate. And you could do that. But what I find to be really, really nice is to not use the generated space, instead to use the object space. And you'll see it kind of gets messed up here. But what I recommend you do, let's just switch into solid view here. Let's Shift A, add an empty, and I'll just use the arrows so that you can see exactly what's going on. And let's move it down and over here. Let's actually put it right in the middle, and I'll do that by going into my location here, and I'll just set it to 0, 0, 0. Okay. So now we can hide that again. So what I'm going to use is in this texture coordinate input over here, I can also use an object. So I'm going to use that empty, and I can click here and just say empty, or I could use the eyedropper tool and pick the empty. And once I do that, you'll see nothing really changes here, but the scale is now a little bit different. And the stripes are global. So what I mean by global is they're in sync across different objects. So if I'm in the front view here, the monkey and the box and the sphere, they line up perfectly, which is sometimes pretty handy. Then you don't have to worry about it. But you'll notice that over on this left side, something's not right. And that's because we're only using the positive values of this empty, and I'm going to keep this in shaded view, in rendered view, and this in normal view. So as I move it over, oops, not the box, the empty, as I move it over, why is that not updating? I guess I must have not picked this. There we go. So as I move this empty, you can see that as I move it back, now all of my objects have that stripe texture throughout. And the best part, if I rotate it on the Z, so I'm going to go up to top view. If I rotate it on the Z axis, I can rotate my stripes however I want. If I go back to front view, I can rotate it here, and my stripes are getting rotated over here. So I find this to be the easiest. Instead of dabbling with the different mapping nodes and sometimes losing track of what I need to do, I just use this object coordinate, and it works really well. And I can clear the rotation, rotate it on the Y-axis by 45 degrees, and then in my front view, my stripes are all exactly perfect. The downside of doing it this way is if I go to rotate, say, my monkey head, and I'm rotating it, the stripes are global, so they're not going to follow the shape. So in that case, you wouldn't want to use this. Instead, you would want to use the generated. And then if I rotate my monkey, they stick with the object. So that's just something that you have to think about. And then, if you're using the generated, then you would have to go in here and say, I want it rotated, and, do whatever you need to do there. So the last step I'm going to do here is, instead of using this diffuse, I'm going to use something different. And for this example, I'm going to grab this dielectric shader that Andrew Price from Blender Guru made. So I'm just going to copy it and go back in here and delete the diffuse, paste it in, move it into place, plug in the shader into the surface and the color into the color. And now I've got this nice, shiny, glossy, good-looking shader. And that's pretty much it. If you want this material for free, all you have to do is go to daringdino.com/newsletter to sign up for the newsletter. And if you make something great with this tutorial, with this texture, please send me a link. I'm on Twitter at daring_dino, and you can obviously check out the rest of the website at daringdino.com.
Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.